Hello, folks, and thank you very much for tuning into the Cloud Native FM podcast. We're heading very closer to the KubeCon Chicago. I think it's merely a 2 to 3 weeks from now. And if you are going there, make sure to meet Tag App Delivery Team at KubeCon, and I will let you know why. There are some very good reason to meeting these folks in the KubeCon. So let's set the agenda first. What we are covering today in this episode of Cloud Native FM podcast. We are joined by today Josh Gavant. Josh founded CNCF working group platform a few years ago and now leads it and its parent Tag and Tag App Delivery. These groups work to enable CNCF projects to better serve user and to help user make the most of CNCF many app delivery project. And in April 2023 this year in KubeCon Amsterdam, WG Platform Working Group released a platform definition white paper defining cloud native computing platforms and their value to enterprises. And in a few weeks from now, the group is preparing a follow up, a platform engineering maturity model white paper to help enterprises evaluate their current state and make the most of their platform. So the draft still is going and going through the final acceptance, but the model the team has developed is already extremely useful for thinking about how to build and run your platform teams. So let's set the convo first without any further delay. Thank you very much, Josh, for being on the show and talking to us and giving us a walkthrough of the platform maturity white paper. Over to you, your quick intro, and then we start the proceeding.
Yeah, thank you, Saim. It's great to finally to come on your show to share some of our work with everybody. Um, Definitely my goal, and I think the group's goal is always to do what we can to make cloud users more successful. Like you said, we founded this group. It's about 2 years ago now, I think. We got it together 2.5 2 years ago. Started as the cooperative delivery working group. How do you cooperate, have your application developers cooperate with your infrastructure developers? And then we realized, well, that platform movement is answering that question. And so let's get involved. Let's help people adopt platforms because that's how they're going to be successful in delivering their apps and delivering their infrastructure. So yeah, thanks for having me, and really excited to share what we're working on.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for actually starting and joining us on the discussion. And let's start our talking first. What do we mean by platform engineering? So I think if you go circle back into some of the New Stack article, they are actually telling there's one of the article wrote by Appy from our working group that is a core maintainer of the platform in working group. He shared that the platform engineering is a discipline dedicated to removing frictions and frustration across the software developer lifecycle in order to improve developer experience. And I recently joined in this channel, I think few months from now, Alexis Richardson, CEO of VWorks, and he coined the platform engineering as how we simplify computing for every developer in our organization by creating environment for them to run their apps. Now, let's go back to Josh. Josh, please help us defining platform engineering based on your recent conversation you have with the community.
Yeah, this is a really good timing because this has been coming up. We take for granted some definitions that we put in our first paper. And so, yeah, we wanted to clarify those. I think it's really interesting, those two quotes you just had about how platform engineering is to make developers' lives easier, reduce the cognitive load on them. I kind of see that as the why. Like, why is platform engineering important? Why is it emerging now? Why do we think enterprises should start adopting it? It's mostly for that reason, to accelerate app developers, to reduce the cognitive load on them. But I do think it's a little different than what platform engineering is. Like, I wouldn't say platform engineering intrinsically is about only the developer experience. It's really about building platforms, building that middle layer, serving other developers. That's a lot of times what I think of it as. Like an app developer is serving a non-technical end user, creating a product for a non-technical end user. Whereas here on these platform teams, you're serving a very, very technical developer. You're serving your peer, your colleague. And so that's what platform engineering really is all about, building that middle layer that your app developers, your platform users can really take advantage of. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So now, yes, absolutely. Go ahead, Josh, if you want to add a few things in before I can ask another question.
I was, if you're curious, one of the interesting things in the first paper was we not only defined platform engineering, but we tried to set a common understanding of what a platform itself is, which I think has been pretty helpful. The idea that you bring together a bunch of capabilities in that platform to serve some need, which for us a lot of times is app developers, first-party app developers. But we meant to be pretty open with that. Like, what if it's an ML ops platform you're building? What if it's an information worker system? People need Windows desktops. It's not always about first-party app developers. So we tried to be a little more general with our definition of platforms and platform engineering in our papers.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And if you go into if you can read the definite white paper, the CNCF platform white paper, you can actually read those conversations that we're actually having right now. So I think right now is a good time to ask another question on the same right. So we are also be hearing that as platform engineering gets popular, and many companies are interested in self-service portal to empower developers and reduce their cognitive overload.
Mm-hmm.
How are these portal part of platform engineering? Over to you
Oh,
now, Josh.
Oh yeah, thank you, Saim. Thank you for tossing me a softball here. I love this question because I love that people are interested in backstage and in portals. I think what it really is that that's the first experience that people have with your platform. Whether it's someone new onboarding to it, whether it's an executive that wants to see, hey, what have you all been doing the past 6 months? What they see is that portal that makes that whole experience great. I get whatever I need. I get the information about what's happening, all in one pane of glass, all that kind of good stuff. So that portal, no doubt, really important. And we emphasize it in all of our papers. Like, you need interfaces to your platform, and a GUI or some sort of graphical one is a really important one. I do think it's really important to call out, and that's why I said you gave me a softball. If you don't have a good platform behind the portal, like, a good portal doesn't help. You got to have something that does all that heavy lifting in the background. So yeah, a lot of attention gets paid to the backstages and the portals, but frankly, I think a lot of us platform engineers like to focus on the heavy lifting part of it even more, and that's really what comes out in the wash when people are doing things. Does it work efficiently? Is the patterns work? That's kind of behind the portal. So portal is really important, but it's just the tip of the iceberg for your platform.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, totally agree to it. And now the next question, we can move on with the session. I think there's a really informative article written by the Poor team describing the developer's cognitive load, because you often hear the platform engineering definition coined as removing the cognitive load. So there's a one wonderful article written on what the cognitive load is. To demonstrate the cognitive load, the port article written this said that the cognitive load on developers is when a developers need to implement a new feature, they need to know a few things beforehand. Which microservices API do they need to interact with? Who owns those microservices? How can they add a new cloud resource with Terraform or Pulumi? How would they roll out a new version, and what environments are involved in the process? Now the question becomes, Josh, this: What do you think about cognitive load for developers and the many different forms it takes?
Yeah, I like that question because, one thing that comes to mind is that cognitive load in our industry kind of ebbs and flows. There are, like, I'm sure if you talk to someone in the 1960s or 50s, when we went from like machine code and signals to assembly, they were like, this really reduced my cognitive load. Or then from assembly to C, or not C++, probably that probably increased the cognitive load. But there's this ebb and flow. Sometimes, it gets too complicated. And that's kind of what's happened, I feel like, for us the past like 10 years, maybe 15 years. And I think it has a lot to do with the cloud movement and software defined infrastructure, where, previously you're a software engineer, you create the software, you run it on hardware. Now you create the software and you run it on software. And so that's we've kind of assumed, like, oh, well, it's all software. So Mrs. Application Developer, you should be able to do the infrastructure part too now. Just write some scripts and some Terraform and code and Pulumi, whatever you use, and you're off to the races. So we've kind of like let that kind of creep up on us the past 10 years. And now we're getting a lot of pressure to, hey, that's it's software defined now, but it's still a totally different field. Writing software for infrastructure and platform capabilities versus writing software that you deliver to end users. And so that's kind of where we're at now with platforms, is can we create this kind of separation of concerns where we let some software engineers, platform engineers work on platform capabilities, shared things that everybody uses, and then let app devs focus on business logic and app level concerns.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much for elaborating those. I think, like, before jumping into the main crux of this debates around platform maturity white paper, I think before jumping into the conversation of that end, can you please give us a virtual tour and role of tag app delivery and working groups under it and assignment of workload under different working groups inside CNCF?
Yeah, this is a good one. It's interesting for folks that are thinking of getting involved with CNCF. It's a very grassroots, especially the technical side, very grassroots organization, very up to volunteers that come in and have a vision to kind of work with that vision, bring people along and make it happen. And so I guess what I've tried to do really with Tag App Delivery is kind of make us the PMs of the cloud native ecosystem, to really like treat the CNCF projects kind of like products, to feedback, help them understand what end users need, at the same time to go to our end users and tell them about these projects and tell them how to use them. So our charter is really to help all these apps. Let me take a step back, actually. So our goal is kind of to be PMs for the projects and help end users understand them. Taking a step back a little, really the CNCF, especially the technical side of the CNCF, like under the technical oversight committee, our first responsibility is to those projects. So like when a new sandbox submission comes in, they come present to, if it's relevant to app delivery, they come present to us. We try to help them find their place in the ecosystem, introduce them to other project maintainers, and then produce stuff for people to use them. But that's, that connection to end users is something that's really important to me, and that I've really pushed within Tag App Delivery, since I've been involved. Is it's not enough to just support the projects. Really, as part of the supporting the projects, we got to work with the end users too. I think that's a key element of what we're doing there, trying to support our projects and support our end users. The working groups, we create them when there's some subdomain which deserves its own attention, where we want to create a paper or some sort of guidance to help people, or prototypes, or something that's going to last 6 to 12 months or longer. We create a group to kind of bring people together. Right now we have 2 active groups. One is this platforms group, which turns out a lot of what we're doing is enablement, like trying to help end users really succeed with platforms. The other group is Artifacts, which is really a little bit more project oriented. It's, the leader of it is from the Zot project and also a Red Hatter from one of our Quay or security projects. And they're trying to find some synergies amongst the artifact registries that we have, like Zot, like Artifact Hub, like distribution. I don't know if people know about that one. It's a CNCF project from Docker, actually, originally. So that group is kind of focused back into the projects, finding ways for them to work together. Platforms is outbound. A couple other ones that have come up. There's a group that's trying to get together API standards and API patterns. We haven't succeeded in getting that going yet. And then there's a group, I've wanted to get a group together around secrets and service bindings, how to make that better. But we can't we need people. So yeah, here's a pitch. If you're really passionate about a domain that's relevant to app delivery, come talk to us. We're happy to have more leaders step up and support us.
Yes, thank you very much, Josh, for elaborating it, because that's a question people will ask often. Join CNCF Slack channel. Here's a link for it, and join the working group platform or the CNCF Slack channel, where me and Josh always there to happy to answer your question. Now let's go into the stuff we have been working on for a year now, thanks to the incredible team we have in the platform working group. Can you talk about the motivation behind the original CNCF platform's white paper we published for KubeCon Amsterdam? And who is the intended audience, and what domain of PE are covered in this paper?
Yeah. First, I want to just relate to that first thing you said, which is the incredible people in the group. And that's really true. I mean, definitely for me, one of the biggest benefits has just been, a group of really expert and kind people that have been working together to pull these ideas together, really make them better. Personally, I'm a writer, I guess, so I do a lot of the writing and editing. But the ideas, like I can even tell you, my own ideas have changed so much as we've gone along. Like sometimes I tell stories of things that have changed for me, like internal. I didn't want to use the word internal to describe platforms for a little while, and then I had a knockdown, drag out conversation with some other leads, and they were like, "No, it really is relevant here." And turns out I really have embraced it in the end. So that's been great. As to why we wrote that paper, like I said before, like our group was about cooperative delivery. How do we let people get their apps out and the infrastructure out, in a cooperative way? And we saw okay, the answer the industry is kind of rallying around it is platforms. If you, centralize, I don't know, centralized, but if you have dedicated folks that are experts in building the platform and they share that with many folks, that is a good way to achieve that cooperation. So we saw that, but then we realized, look, the executives at your company, your directors, they don't want to hear about, it's going to be easier to cooperate with my opera. I mean, maybe they do, but they want to know the results that they're going to see for the business as a result of this stuff. And so in that paper we wrote, we kind of took a step back and we wanted to say, why are these platforms creating value for people? What is the business value you're going to get from them? We needed to say what they are, because we're saying, if we're going to say why, you have to say what you're saying why about. So there was a need to give a pretty solid definition of what a platform is and why it's going to deliver that value. So that was really the goal of the first paper. And so, for example, the audience of it, yeah, everybody should read it. Let's establish some common understanding. Even if you disagree with it, read it, and then you can have something to disagree with. That's good too. But we wrote it for those directors and executives who need to be convinced, yeah, we should invest in platforms. We really wanted to bring those people over to our side. So we took some opinions there on what a platform is. I mentioned earlier the idea that you're bringing together a lot of capabilities to serve some end user purpose. We have a list of capabilities in there at the end, to kind of give people some initial guideposts. What should you be looking at putting in your platform? We talk about attributes like self-service and treat your platform as a product, things like that. So definitely we take some opinions about platforms, but the main purpose is to convince you that, yes, this is the direction your enterprise should take.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And now let's dive into the things we actually let's dive into the convo. It'll be really interesting because that's where we have some wonderful news for the community. So let's start with the first question. What is the platform maturity model we have been working on this summer?
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this. So basically, even before we finalized the first paper, we were already having people ask us basically like, okay, you've convinced us that there's value in these platforms. Now give us some hints. How do we go about building these? Where do we start? And at the so we knew that we needed to go a level deeper. One of the ways that I've been describing it is our first paper is kind of strategic. Here's a strategy you should adopt, to be successful with cloud computing, to ultimately accelerate your product releases, et cetera, et cetera. Here's a strategy. And this second maturity model is really getting in a little more into tactics. So you've accepted the strategy. Here's how you can think about doing something about it, actually executing on that strategy. Yeah. At the same time, Syntasso, which is Abby Bangzer, like you mentioned, she's my co-lead in the group now. She became a co-lead after KubeCon Amsterdam, actually, and she's been a really great aid, a really great support. Her company had created a platform, which actually it made the rounds a little bit. It was mentioned in Humanitech's newsletter a few weeks ago too, even. So they had produced like an initial version, and they donated that to us and said, "Do you want to publish it?" And we said, "Yeah, but it's going to take a little while. We can't just take it and publish it as is. We need to get a lot of consensus. We need to get people working together." So they started it, but we really have spent hours and hours this summer. Probably some people have spent days even, debating the concepts in there, refining them, really getting it down to something which I think is really useful. I mean, nothing's ever 100% perfect, but it really can be an aid for platform adopters and platform builders. Yeah, I guess I didn't really.
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry, Saim. I didn't really describe what the maturity model like at a high level is. So let me just take a second, I guess. Basically, we created we've narrowed down about 5 aspects, and within each of those aspects, we talk about different levels, different characteristics you would find in organizations that are at different levels of those different aspects. To help people find themselves and figure out where they might go next. Sometimes the most important thing is just getting a grasp of the current situation, being able to discern where are we now. So that's kind of the idea of it. Help you find yourself so that you can, chart a journey of what comes next. A little bit of a lag, I think.
Lags, but I can still hear you. Please go ahead. Got it. So I think on the topic of this, I can add up one more question on the initial conversation as an above layer. As we see in the platform, there is a categorization, and there are different level of categorization. So number one question is, how many different attributes of the platform are covered in this white paper? Because there are some nuances and new terminologies coined in the recently. So how many of the different attributes? Number two is, what was the prime motivation behind the categorizing aspect the way it looks today?
Yeah, that's a very fair point. It might take a read or two to get comfortable with these 5 aspects. I know I've been reading this paper now for like 2 or 3 months, at least once a week. So I've got it pretty in there. But we were looking for, we wanted to, capture what the actual aspects are, what we see on the ground, what we've learned talking to our customers, for those of us that are vendors, or ourselves, those of us that are end users. what we see, and we wanted also to choose aspects that that had a continuum, that we could describe here. If you're at level 1, you'll find these things about yourself, and if you wanted to get to the next level, here's some things you might target, you might try to do. So you'll find that in all of them. Like, for example, one of them that's not there, which maybe I should have mentioned from the start, but like, we didn't put compliance as a continuum, as a level, as an aspect, because we weren't sure that there was a continuum there. So yeah, that was really the motivation. Find what we see is actually in place that the customers we're working with, and find that continuum that we can define for folks.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, perfectly. And I think like if we review today, like if I look at start reading the draft of the platform maturity model, we see aspects like investment, adoption, interfaces, operations, and measurement. So I think it's a good point to start the convo with the investment according to the white paper. Let's we choose one of the pillar of the paper that's called investment. So the question becomes is like how stuff and fund allocated to platform capabilities. Can you describe what this means?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that one up, Saim. It's actually one that did not get mentioned in the definitions paper. And at first, when it was here, I was like, what is this?
Yes.
I mean, now I think we got to get it into the definitions paper. But basically, it's, it's kind of obvious. Depending on how the organization invests, puts people and money, funds towards the platform, that's going to majorly affect what the platform can do. A really interesting anecdote. Literally, as I was understanding what this aspect was myself, I had an interview with a customer through my my day job at Red Hat, and the customer is known. They have a platform, an internal platform for app development, for web app development, pretty well funded, resourced. It's a dedicated team. It's got funding. So we thought, oh, we're gonna hear from these folks. We had an interview with a platform engineer at the company. We're gonna hear about this platform that they're building. Well, it turns out the person that responded and was talking to us was not on that team at all. Was on some other team, and actually an app team, and had created as kind of a side project, a skunkworks project for their app. They needed it, a kind of data processing system, and they were making that capability available to other teams in the company. But in this, and they were kind of complaining to us, they're like, it's really hard. I don't know how to maintain it. I don't have people to do support. This is just a side gig for me. And it was so cool because it was like, oh, there I have someone on L1, basically the lowest level for investment. This is a side job for somebody on an app team at the same company where there's another platform or platform capability, which is like L3 or L4. They do have a dedicated team and they do invest in this. So it not only kind of confirmed this idea that there are different ways to invest in a platform, and it's something you should think about. It also confirmed another idea, which is that most companies have more than one platform, and they have to kind of work together. So yeah, so I'm really happy we got that investment aspect in. I think that's going to be revelatory for folks.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I think that's a very important way to look at it as well. And I think like if we can circle back in the conversation right now, I think also we have seen in the recent articles around platform as a product mindset. A typical suggestion is platforms should be treated no differently than building any other product. So if I read through the various aspect in the model, the maturity model platform to white paper today, what's your take on a product mindset? Is there any question answer on that front?
Yeah, good question. It's interesting that it's not like a category, even though it was an attribute actually in the first paper, treat your platform as a product. And yeah, it actually came up in the definition of platform engineering. Should that include platform as product? And I kind of argued actually it shouldn't. But where, this question was a good prompt for me. Where does it come out in the maturity model? What would it look like to treat a platform as product? How would that map into the maturity model? And where it really comes out is at level 3. Basically, in almost all the 5 aspects, I would say, I'm going to go through 3 of them here. It's as you get into level 3 where you're literally, it's platform as a product. So for example, in the investment category, we actually titled the level 3 as product. And we meant exactly what you just said, that the company invests in it like they would invest in an external product. They say, look, if there's demand for this platform, then those app teams should be willing to pay for it. So for example, you might have a chargeback model. We're going to invest in it because we expect you to go out and make sure that you're meeting your customers' needs. So definitely, like, investment kind of switches from, in L2, it's more like, well, we need some of this kind of function. We'll regrettably, put some money to a team to work on it. And L3 is where you say, no, we're going to invest and treat it like a proper product. In another category, so adoption. Adoption really says, how is it that people discover the platform? What motivates them to start using it? And there also, we kind of go, if you look at level 2 and level 3, level 2 is kind of, there's some sort of extrinsic force. Your manager is saying, you really need to use that platform that they're building. Or when you go to the architecture review board, they say, hey, if you're not using what the platform offers, we can't give you funding or we can't approve your project. So there's like these extrinsic factors. But then level 3 is intrinsic pull, is the title. And what that means is, like, I want to use this platform. It's got exactly what I need. It's making my life easier. You don't have, well, I'm happy if you give me a bonus for it, but like, you don't have to. I want to. This is making my life easier. And so that also jives with that platform as product, because if you're treating your platform as a product, that's what you're going to create, something that your customers, want to use. It's not like they have to use it. It's they want to use it. So that's, again, L3. And then finally, the measurement category, which that's another one that surprised me, I guess, that it's in here. But I love it because I feel like actually probably as an industry, we're a little bit low level in this and how we're measuring, what platforms are doing for themselves and for the overall organization. And so in measurements also, we kind of went from, level 1 is barely any measurement. Level 2 is a little bit more ad hoc. Yeah, I have some measures, but it's just, whatever somebody, CPU memory. But level 3 is where I'm collecting, data that I know is going to tell me something I need to know about my users or about, problems people are having. So we call that insights. And that, again, it's tipping into that platform as product mindset. Like, I need to choose, the metrics that are important to me, or the outcomes that are important to me, choose the metrics appropriately. I need to learn from those and integrate, the results back into my operations. So yeah, I mean, there's 2 other also, and I could probably describe in each of those kind of how L3 is probably that line, but I think you kind of get the idea. We do kind of say that not all platforms need to be treated as a product. That's what I kind of said at the beginning. Like, maybe there's a situation where you only have one product in your company and you just own the whole stack. Like, it doesn't make sense to have a platform. Although I guess you could argue, even in that case, treating your platform as a product in that case means, well, they don't really need a platform, so I'm not going to create it. So there's still like some product thinking there. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I think if audience, if you have any question and if you're thinking like, what is we talking about currently, go into this GitHub link, the tag app delivery. This is a white paper and that we actually wrote. And if you go into this link, GitHub, there and read it and send suggestions, provide feedback, and before the final publishing, we will take those into the consideration. And all those as are very, very well crafted written, because it's tell all the different aspect we're actually talking about on the conversation today. So I think we spoke wonderfully well. We started with the what platform engineering is. We spoke about developers' cognitive load. We spoke about the role of tag app delivery, and we spoke about platform maturity, what it means today. We spoke about the different aspect of the platform model. Now the question came in. Usually people see the platform engineering, removing cognitive load for developers, it's just for the developers. Forget about other things. Now the question became is and that I think that's become a very important questions is who is the attended audience of the maturity white paper and how many different level within an organization can benefit from it, like developers, platform engineers, CIOs, product managers, FinOps engineers, and blah blah blah. How many different level or the roles can benefit and learn from this paper?
Yeah, that's a good prompt. Because we mentioned before that kind of the first paper, although anybody could and should read it, our target audience is kind of that executive or director, convince them of platforms. This one kind of, again, corresponding to what we said before, it's a little more tactical. It is more for the executive to kind of say to the director or the director to the senior manager or whatever it is, go read this to learn how we're going to go about this practice. Like they could read in adoption, identify themselves, let's say in number 2, which we mentioned a little before, extrinsically motivated. Do you find yourself here? Okay, so let's think about how we might get to level 3. How might we get people intrinsically motivated to pick up some of the platform stuff? So it really applies a little lower to your senior architects or to your senior managers. Kind of help them learn tactics for making the platforms better or continuing to evolve that platform practice. I also want to mention, I think that it has benefit for app devs or ML ops practitioners or whoever it is, the people that are using the platform. It's not even so bad for them to take a look at this maturity model and understand how their role might change as an organization adopts platforms or matures in platforms. Because really in the later stages, you're really looking at a cooperative process. The most advanced one, you treat it as a product, you really need input from your app devs. Investment, you really need the app. Will the app team be willing to pay for it or contribute some to the platform? That's at the 4th level of investment, is some of the app teams are even participating in building the platform. The reason I mentioned that is because, sometimes app devs get a little frustrated with us infrastructure folks, just throwing stuff over the wall. But what I wanted to kind of advocate is have a little patience and show a collaborative spirit with your infra devs and see if you can, from the app dev side, also encourage this cooperation and cooperative delivery.
Absolutely, 100% agreed. And I think like now we circle back to the point where I think we love this conversation and we spoke about every day. So how should a platform be integrated with tool, services, and ecosystem and a gigantic ecosystem of CNCF landscape?
Yeah, when you mentioned maybe asking this question, Saim, I was kind of thinking, like, is this a trick question? Because, we kind of say platforms themselves, that's their job, is to integrate a bunch of tools and services and ecosystems in a consistent kind of way. But the truth is, and this is kind of how I interpreted your question, that most places end up with a bunch of platforms. You have maybe a platform for your app developers to use. You might have an ML ops platform. You might have some capability that's maintained somewhere else. So you have kind of a few different things that you might consider platforms or platform-like. And it's really so I'm kind of interpreting this as interoperation of that. And what I would say, like, for example, that group that I talked about earlier, where there was a team that created some sort of data platform in addition to the main platform team creating some sort of app development platform. In those, there is an opportunity. In fact, the talk we're going to give at KubeCon, the panel talk, is called Platforms All the Way Down. With the idea being that, we've always built platforms on top of platforms on top of platforms. So really, like, if you do have several platforms at your org, one thing to think about is your platform for platforms. How do we make sure that the patterns, adopted in all of them are kind of consistent? Yeah, which is again, so that's kind of our goal. That's how we define platforms in the first paper, and it's kind of the goal is a consistent collection of capabilities to serve some end purpose. Consistent.
Question is, I think now we can circle back on the conversation to what's the process for maintaining and upgrading your platform components if those components is actually came from the ecosystems.
Yeah, you know what's interesting about this question. So there's no one answer to this. It really you're letting me talk about, I think, the operations aspect in the maturity model. Basically, one of the key
Yes.
things we talked about in that operations line is how do you think about that long-term life cycle of whatever it is you're creating? Like most of the early stages, you don't think about it. You're like, oh gosh, I need databases. So let me deploy a database. Now, how do I do backups for that database? How do I upgrade it when a new version comes out? How do I, do schema migrations or something? That's kind of deferred to later. But then you get a little bit more mature. At least maybe there is in operations, it goes from, I think, ad hoc or something. The next stage is centrally tracked. So that means that, I know that there are 10 different capabilities. This team, provides S3 buckets. This team provides Kafka queues. This team can give you a database somewhere. And they might have the team that does databases also knows how to upgrade them, and the team that does queues knows how to upgrade
Yes.
them. Each one has their own thing. What we'd really like to get to, and what we encourage there is in your operations is that third level, which is centrally managed, where not only is, some team tracking, oh, there's 10 different capabilities scattered around our enterprise, but some team is instituting some common standards or trying to promulgate some common frameworks so that, every new platform component is upgradable, is maintainable. So yeah, I guess I kind of think today, a lot of organizations, this comes second, like measurement. Like the first thing you do is you want to get something out there. Maybe you don't think about what it's going to look like on day 2, upgrades and things like that. So a lot of folks still at the level 1, level 2 there. But hopefully, you get to level 3 in operations, assuming that's appropriate for your environment, as we always say. And then, you have some sort of standard process for upgrades.
Yes, absolutely. I think like we spoke about platform as a product mindset. I mean, in the previous discovery, we spoke about integrated tool and services and ecosystem. And then people think about, oh, is this a platform? Is this product? It has some tools in it. Now we have some question like if they have some tools and the product mindset, then we need to understand how to upgrade it, how to maintain its component, how to roll back these. And this is the conversation usually coined into the people's mind with the same knowledge that I already have for the different various aspect of it. So I think right now we can actually circle back to the very important discussion. I believe you have seen some conversation in the past as well. And remember, if you have a startup that needed to decide a building or buying a platform, now they wanted to know, is there any guidance provided but this white paper?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. Basically, I mean, I want to say no, because I want to say the paper is very explicit about saying you got to know your own context. We're giving you like a generic, here's these 5 aspects, here's a continuum in each one of where you might find yourself. Now you got to go in and find yourself. So there's definitely that caveat. Like it definitely depends, what kind of startup. For example, if it's a very small startup, you might not want to dedicate a team and fund the team, to do your platform. Or like we said before, like if your product itself is just a single kind of vertically integrated something, then platform is not really relevant. You don't need shared capabilities. Just build it all into the one product that you have. So definitely a little bit depends on context. On the other hand, I would say for this startup and for anyone, this is a good paper to get ideas from. You can identify and deliberately choose, say, to stay at level 1, to say, we're not going to invest in a platform team, or we're going to invest in a cost center platform team to handle a couple things we need. I heard somewhere sometime that making distinctions, separating between, black and white. That's a core human capability. That's how we build our understanding. And so this paper really tries to give you more distinctions, more steps for your thought process, so you can make better decisions. So even this startup, I don't know what their exact context is, and they're going to have to apply it, but certainly, read this and they're going to get ideas.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I think we can read because that's a very tougher question. Like you have some cultural aspect to think into the consideration. You have to understand what the team you actually operating currently, how much they're proficient with some of the latest shift in the cloud trends. I think it's very tougher question, but I think it give you some good roadmap ahead. That's for sure. So now the next question I think is before we let the conversation end. So I think also I notice in some of the recent article, a very lesser known concepts are taking the center stage recently, such as differentiating between a minimal viable product, I guess, and thinnest viable platform. And one of our colleague and the core maintainer, Abby Bengzer, wrote a recent article on this, and she says MVP speaks to the initial phase of an idea while TVP speaks to the lifetime of a product. So MVP is applied at the beginning of an implementation, whether the idea is for brand new product or a new direction or an existing offering. So in contrast, TVP is about ongoing maintenance of the minimal concept until it is unsettled, regardless of if or how much it grows in complexity and use. So, with that context, Josh, what do you think? When should we consider these conversations around MVPs and TVPs for platform features?
Yeah, I saw Abby's article on that. I think end of last week. Really, really good article because I think that she feels, and I do too, that TVP is a really valuable concept that most people haven't heard about. In fact, we did even mention it in our first paper, and we quoted Matthew Skelton and Manuel Pius, I think, the Team Topologies folks, who came up with the idea. Yeah, and Abby is absolutely right. Even though they share two letters, the MVP and TVP are really very different concepts. And don't think that a TVP means to build the small, to build this. It's just a different purpose. Let's put it this way. So, an MVP it's a product concept. I'm trying to verify my product idea. Does it solve the problem that I think it does? Are people interested in it? Are they going to pay for it? Things like that. I don't expect my MVP to be my final product. It's an experimental tool. It helps me learn what people need. And in fact, as a platform engineer, if I'm applying platform as product practices, then I should have some MVPs. If a user says, I got this problem and I need you to solve it, then maybe the first thing I do is give them an MVP. Here's, an eventing system. Tell me how it works. Tell me how it goes for you. Is this solving your problem? If it is, we're going to productize it. If not, we're going to try something else. So there's definitely MVPs for platform features too. But TVP is a whole different concept. Thinnest viable platform. It's a philosophy about how you build your platform, not just on day one, but on day 1,000, the whole way through. How are you going to see? We lost Saim, but he told me, don't worry, he'll hopefully be back. How we build a platform long term, the thinnest viable layer on top of whatever you can get from somewhere else. So it really comes down to like a build versus buy kind of question, or related to the build versus buy question. How much can I delegate from my platform to providers, to open source projects, to existing known implementations? How much can I delegate off to somewhere else? That's really what TVP is about. How much can I take off my plate? I gotta own, this is something also I feel really strong about. You gotta own the topmost layer. You, Mr. and Mrs. Enterprise, platform engineer, you need to own the interfaces and the experiences you're providing. but you don't need to own any of the stuff that's underneath that. If you give a great experience and it's all based on AWS or Azure or, you know, whatever it is, Kubernetes, you know, that you run yourself, it doesn't matter. As long as the experience is good for your engineers. So that's what thinnest viable platform is really about. It's this philosophy of let me always just be building that top layer. I think the best example of a thinnest viable platform kind of mindset is if you've created a capability yourself and then your cloud provider or something comes up with it. You have a choice at that point. You can choose to say, you know what, I'm going to let me figure it's hard because you put a lot into this thing that you've got, but you have a choice to say, well, now AWS offers Lambda. I'm just choosing a random thing. I don't need to build my own serverless thing anymore. Or maybe you do. Maybe, you know, I need to run it myself for whatever reason, so I'm going to keep building it. But the point is, you know, if you can remove that responsibility and move your platform, your owned part of the platform higher up, make it thinner, still viable, still you own that experience, but make it thinner, that's going to save you time, save you energy, let you do more valuable things for your business, for your enterprise.
Yes.
So basically MVPs, TVPs, both pretty important when you're building a platform as a product.
Yes, absolutely. 100% agree with the statement you're actually mentioning here. And like before I let you go, and we have some more news to actually capture for the KubeCon and how people participate in. One question might people ask on the coin. Yeah, we spoke about a lot of the developer experience. We spoke about, you see in the articles around platform engineering, there are two conjunction of terminologies going in. So removing the cognitive load and making sure we have a very good developer experience in that platform as well. So if folks read a white paper right now, the platform maturity white paper, is there any guidance or is there any kind of strategies that actually throwing in the people's mind around the developer experience of the platform?
While reading that paper, I would say,
Yes.
well, so first of all, I would say a good strategy might be to read the definitions paper before you read the maturity model. You know, kind of get yourself familiar with the lingo we use, and then the maturity model might make a little more sense. In terms of developer experience, where it comes up most, I would say two of the aspects there. Adoption, where we talk about what's motivating people to adopt. And we mentioned before at level 3 and level 4, it becomes something intrinsic. It becomes, I really love this thing, so I want to use it. It becomes participatory. I not only want to use it, I'm going to make it better. So that's a really, you know, look at some of the ways we describe and some of the characteristics of that adoption as you get more mature. And then the other one, which we really haven't mentioned in this conversation, so thanks for giving me an excuse to bring it up here. One of them is interfaces, which we probably could have called experiences too. And basically that talks about like going from, well, you open up a ServiceNow ticket or you call someone on the phone, imagine that, to get something done, to becoming more self-service interfaces, self-service APIs, CLIs, even to the point where, you know, maybe stuff gets done automatically. That's L4, like, oh, I deploy a pod and it gets instrumented with telemetry automatically. So that's a real good developer experience, or in my opinion, at least. As a developer, I don't want to have to do all kinds of machinations to get your capability integrated. So also in the interfaces aspect, take a look at some of the later things there. That really is about, you know, a great developer experience.
Yes, absolutely. We missed the interfaces section, but you actually quite on a very right time, at the neck of the time, you actually coin it and make a very good distinction into it. So I think right now we can actually end the conversation on this note, and that's a very important conversation of the today. What are some of the ways to meet tag app delivery in KubeCon Chicago? Because we want to have a brainstorming session for the maturity white paper.
Yeah, and the truth is that it's at these KubeCons where a lot of the learning happens, a lot of the connections are made, a lot of, you know, it takes 6 months afterwards to actually hammer out the paper, but the ideas, you know, come out of these out of KubeCon. So please come and talk to us. Even if you don't have questions, just share your story. The opportunities, we've got a project meeting on Monday morning. You can find it in some of the links at the KubeCon website. There's a lot of project meetings on, oh yeah, thank you. There's a lot of project meetings on Monday. So we've got that Monday morning from 8 to 12. When we have a blog post where we're updating what exactly we'll be doing there. We're going to have a booth in the project pavilion at least every evening, maybe a little earlier in the day too. That's probably the best place. That's the best place to hang out at KubeCon, in my opinion, anyway, because it's all the projects are going to be there. There won't be any sales pitches there. So come over and talk to us at the booth. We're going to hold some lightning talks at the booth. We try to do that, like choose a time every day and get 5 or 6 people to come and share app delivery ideas. So look for that. And then finally, we're doing a panel on platforms on Tuesday afternoon. Me and Abby and a couple end users also coming. So join us there. Find us afterwards. Happy to talk to you. The more we talk, the better. So yeah, just find us.
Yes, that's a true, absolutely. So now we wrap up. Few questions. So booth for F41.
Yes.
Is a tag app delivery booth, and you can actually find ways to sort people and talk a discussion there. So before I let you go, Josh, and I think that's very important for me to understand what uh, before I let you go, please summarize the maturity white paper in 1 or 2 sentences and let me and us know how to promote the work you and your team has put on.
Yeah. Okay, no problem. So the maturity model at its core, it's meant to be a tool that can help any organization or any individual reflect on what their current state is in terms of platform engineering adoption, kind of find themselves amongst those categories. And then based on where they find themselves, quickly find opportunities, good opportunities for what they should do next, how they can mature their practices, further impact their business. If you can find yourself at level 2, then you can start thinking, do I want to get to level 3 in this area? It really, I wanted to borrow the term cognitive load. The idea of the model is it reduces the cognitive load for you trying to determine how to build a successful platform. We want to make it easier. We've put down 20 different things to think about, 5 aspects, 4 categories each. In terms of how you can help, I mean, definitely share the paper, share the ideas with others. And like I said, at some point, like, it's okay if people disagree with them. That's part of the purpose too. A way you can really help us in the group is we need to learn from, end users, especially. So one of the things we try to do is at the beginning of every working group meeting, we say, if you're new or if you have a story to tell, take 2 minutes, tell us our story. We'll even give you more time if you need. So if you have an end user story to tell, come join. Well, you'll join the Slack channel so you can, find us, but then come to the meeting and share your story with us. Help us learn from you and help the whole industry, benefit from your experiences.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Josh. And let me elaborate what we actually covered today. So in my term, I think the maturity model is a tool to help organization reflect on their current state of platform engineering adoption and quickly determine good opportunities to mature their practice and further impact their business. So the model reduces the cognitive load involved in determining how to build successful platform and platform team. A great way to get started is to join our Slack channel, join a meeting or two. In particularly, we had to love to learn more from end user, and we open working group meeting by asking for 2-minute stories related to platform adoption. Now, join us and share your story to help us and help you and the industry. So here are some quick links where you can find us on the meeting. Number 1, go into this chapter link. This is the first platform paper we have wrote, and there are some wonderful session on platform engineering and the platform adoption. Make sure not to miss it. Number 2, read the content of the platform maturity model. If you find some things in it, grammatical mistakes or any feedback, that we would love to cater for. Number 2, if you go to this This is the same platform white paper. Join the CNCF Slack channel. And in that Slack channel, we have a working group platforms where Josh, Abby, and all the peoples are there, wanted to know from you and learn from you and make sure we have some good investment for solving your challenges. And that are the all of this crux of the details. And Josh, thank you very much for elaborating, over spending time or nearly over with me and helping me understand, helping our readers as well to understand it. And if you are into the KubeCon, then no, not to miss Josh, because Josh is in the same city where
Yeah.
KubeCon is gonna hold, and he
Yes,
will
they'll
let
come to my house here.
yes, he's gonna let you know the some beautiful places, some traditions, some cultures, and
Deep
some
dish
great
pizza.
meals and some good food in Chicago. So make sure to meet Josh, the Chicago boy baby living in there. So thank you very much, Josh. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Learned a lot. We hope
Thank
some more and more people and user participating in these discussion and give us an insight to make a improvement with our process and the thought processing. Thank you very much. Stay safe, stay healthy. Have a wonderful day, everyone. And make sure to add your comment to that YouTube chat description, because in that way, we learn from you. Stay safe, stay healthy. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye, everyone. And thanks for joining this podcast.